What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today you probably don't recognize this truck behind me, but we have a 6-liter here and we have some turbo issues going on. You guys know I talk about this all the time. Guys are replacing turbos. They may not need to. I'm not saying you don't have turbo problem, but you may not need to. So we're going to go into some of what you need to start looking at to diagnose if you actually need to replace your turbo, or in this case, one of the definite problems is we just need to replace some intercooler boots. So we got some riffraff intercooler boots here and some new clamps. That's super important, guys. Make sure you're making sure your clamps are in good shape too. So we got new clamps, new riffraff boots, and we're gonna go tear this in. We just got stock factory pipes here, so nothing too crazy, super simple job. We're gonna take these off, get the new stuff on, and I'm gonna show you some of these boots, because these boots wear down and they do break. This is kind of part of a maintenance thing, and I know some people get upset, but the factory boots don't tolerate the oil from the crankcase vent system really well. Hey guys, so that code is P132B. I've actually had this on my white truck. Now I will say in my white truck, it did need the turbo cleaned, but that's not always the case. So guys, here we are underneath it, and some of the things to look at. So what controls the performance of your turbo here, on the sensor side of things, is your mass air pressure, or mass airflow sensor, excuse me. This is on your intake here. And then down here, see if I can get you guys a picture of it. You can't really see it. Right down there is your exhaust back pressure sensor. So sometimes they fail. The sensors normally aren't too bad, but a lot of times that tube can clog up with soot, and you'll want to replace it then. The other thing to look at, now the other thing to lay across, so here's your turbo, obviously your engine oil fill, so you guys kind of have orientation. This tube here is what holds air, so it goes into your intake manifold, and then here, this is what gives you your boost reading, this sensor up here. Now this sensor's been replaced on here. This sensor was replaced, your map sensor? Yes, sir. Yep, so this map sensor's been replaced already. So I imagine this tube was probably checked. Looks like there's some fresh tape on there. But this tube is another one that you can check if your boost readings are kind of messed up. And lastly, you want to check the pigtail here on your turbo, and this looks really good. This looks like it was recently redone. Wires all look good. We have some oil down here, but that doesn't look bad in there. And that's, again, from this boot, and there's a rip right here, so it makes sense that it's pushing oil right onto that line there. Okay, so once you've gone through and you've looked at your sensors, we've checked this hose. Like I said, again, on this, we've already identified that we have some boot issues. This is probably this one back here is probably the only one leaking. This guy sometimes does. These two normally aren't too bad, but we definitely have some excess oil residue coming out of here, so this might be starting to go on the driver's side as well. This guy's definitely, so again, we've identified this. Get high quality parts, guys. Don't get cheap stuff that's not going to work. Make sure you're getting good quality stuff. Don't risk. Riffraffdiesel is who I recommend if you have stock pipes. We can get into aftermarket stuff later, but for stock pipes, get Riffraffdiesel. It's the best. It's not cheap, but you're going to do the job once, and then you're not going to have to do it again, and everything will be the way it's supposed to. So we're going to start tearing into these. These are typically, the factory stuff's typically 11 mil. We'll find out. Then we'll get into the riffraff stuff, and we'll start talking about how to get these boots on and not lose them, because guys always want to do stupid stuff and put hairspray and sand them down. There's a way to do this correctly and not do that, guys. Okay, so we have the passenger side, the hot side intercooler pipe off, and I want to go over a few things. First off, guys, oil residue. You will see it in here. If your crankcase vent system's hooked up, don't be alarmed by this. Here is, I kind of cleaned part of this off. I don't know how well some of these, there's definitely tears in this. I don't know if it's showing up on camera super well, but in here on this crease, very popular to break. There's another line there. Again, I'm not sure how well this is showing up on camera, but don't be alarmed by this oil. It's completely normal to see. Again, this oil is completely normal to see, guys. This is from your crankcase vent system, so unless you have it rerouted somewhere else, then I would be a little more concerned about oil in here, but the crankcase vent system is set up, so no issues here. So what we're going to do, the other thing is these boots get really soft over years. We believe these are original to the truck. Now when you come down here and get this riffraffdiesel, it's much firmer. And don't get me wrong, over time this will soften up, it's just the nature of it. This bead here that you can see in there, that's going to go onto the intercooler pipe itself. This flat side here goes onto the turbo because it already has a lip built in. It doesn't need this piece here. Now here's our factory intercooler pipe, and there's this recess spot. That's where this boot's going to go. We're not going to put it on yet because we want to clean this up. When you take all this stuff off, guys, clean all your connections up. You can use brake clean. Honestly, a rag should work fine. So we're just going to take a rag and clean this up. There's no need to use sandpaper on this or hairspray. I see all sorts of crazy contraptions. Get the right part that has that in there, put it on, and your clamp, you're going to want to put your clamp right over that bead that sits in this groove here, and that's going to hold it down correctly. You also want to torque these to specs. I got to look up to see what they recommend. If not, I'll just look up what I've used on my truck in the past, and we'll use that for these. And again, same down here. You got this bead here. Clamp goes over this. Aftermarket pipes, a lot of times you don't need to worry because they have a bead that protrudes outward. So then you can just get regular boots that have flat spots in them, and it's not as big of a concern. But for these, and then when you do have that, you put the clamp behind the bead. So the clamp kind of catches on it. You don't put over the bead. But you don't want to over tighten these either, because some guys will over tighten these. You'll ruin the pipe, and then you'll have a hard time ever getting it to seal up correctly again. And if you don't need to, you don't want to buy aftermarket pipes, because good ones are expensive. Okay, so we have all of the pipes off. We have all of these cleaned up. Make sure to clean inside, inside here, and definitely this outside really well. You can use some brake clean. Don't go gung-ho. You don't need to. We're not using any brake clean right now. We'll be fine. We have nice heavy-duty boots and new clamps. Again, it'll be a nice setup. We did remove, this is the factory intake. Took me a while to remember how to even pull this out. It's been a long time. But we got the factory intake out, just this middle section here. It's over there. And that let me enough access to wrestle the rest of that out. I did have to quick pop this off for just a second. But now that, again, inside and out of all of our connections here are tied up, so what I like to do is I like to loosely just put our boots on. I don't tighten anything down until it's actually on the truck. And I basically set all my clamps so I can still get them without removing anything. So I'll make sure my clamps on this side are pointed up towards me. Up top, I like to run them over top and straight across. On this one here, I run them up the back side and straight up, so it's easy access. That's a lie. I run them this other way and straight up closer to the oil filter housing. And this one, guys, if you have, so I also have this pretty much exact setup here, and I just run them over on this side, pointing relatively straight up so I can get to them with just a big extension. So we're gonna start putting these on. Again, we're torquing to spec. Make sure, like, that groove, when you have the groove, make sure it's where it needs to be. This guy. So here's a flared end one. This goes to the flared end of this boot, goes on our passenger side on the intercooler, and then the smaller side hooks up to the pipe itself. Okay guys, so we got the truck back together. We got all the riffraff boots on, new clamps, tightened down. Again, clean your connections. Don't put this back together oily. You can use brake clean if you need. We just wiped them off here, so nothing super fancy. Inside and out, make sure everything's nice and clean. If you're not clean, you will have problems. Again, if your clamps are in bad shape, get new ones. Honestly, when you get the riffraff kit, just buy new clamps. Don't cheap out on this. You're going to give yourself a darn headache in the end of this. And then you're going to have guys on the internet telling you how you got to use sandpaper and hairspray and a whole bunch of stuff that's not needed, that you don't need. If you need to do that on a relatively factory truck, or even a truck making less than 600 horsepower, you have a different issue, and it sure as heck isn't that your system's making that much power. A ton of factory setups, guys, are doing these things, and they don't have to. It's a waste of time. Do the job right the first time. That is the big take home here. So we got everything nice, so I can actually get some light on there for you, so I can access every clamp without removing a bunch of stuff here. And I'm a little OCD about things lining up. But even these two down here I can get to, you can kind of see it right there. So everything's there. We started it up. Sounds strong. It's a good running 6-liter. The owner said it sounds completely different from before, and that's because, again, we were losing boost out of the boots there. So truck sounded really good. You guys probably saw the clip of it there a little bit. We will, again, check all your boots, check your sensors and hookups, make sure everything's nice that I talked about in the beginning of the video. That's the start to diagnosing this. Before you go through pulling out an entire turbo, which is a much more irritating job than what I did today, do this. I took my time. We were talking, goofing around, under 2 hours for this, or approximately 2 hours, plus filming on top of it. So there were a lot of extra steps in this process for me, and I still got it done relatively easily. So big take home here, do it right. Make sure you're putting this all together. Riffraff boots are excellent, high quality stuff. The clamps are nice. Torque the clamps down to spec as well. These are super important steps if you want this truck to run right. Now, we're gonna clear the code. He's gonna let me know if the code stays off, and we'll kind of decide at that point if we need to make a follow-up video on actually checking some of these other things. They're pretty simple though, again, to review. The hose to your map sensor doesn't typically fail. Check all your connections at your map, your mass airflow sensor, your exhaust back pressure, your VGT solenoid there. Check all of those hookups and the pigtails associated with them. And the first one that most commonly causes issues with turbos is your exhaust back pressure. Not necessarily the sensor, but the tube that goes to the exhaust manifold. I would replace that before I would replace anything else after I did the boots if you've established that you've had a problem. So if you guys have any questions about this or what I would do further, hit me up in the comment section. I'll happily check. I did forget one other thing. Check for exhaust leaks. That's the next thing. A little soapy water over your exhaust manifolds while the truck's running. You'd look for bubbling. Check for soot coming out of them or against your firewall is another common place if the Y pipe's leaking. These are all places to check for leaks that do happen. So you want to check all these random things before you go pull the turbo. Save yourself the money, guys. Turbos aren't cheap. If you are in the market for upgraded turbo, shout out to Turbo Time USA. Use code 6.0 Bros. There is an affiliate link down in the description for that. But check those guys out if you're in that market. But before you start replacing turbos, guys, check these little things. You can save a lot of money and time and energy before you go that route. Guys, shameless merch plug, 6.0 Bros merch. Check down at Teespring, has all the new stuff, has our 10K shirt. We are gonna design a second 10K shirt. I just haven't gotten to it yet. Look for that coming soon. For about 1,000 subscribers, that stuff's gonna be up. 4-hour live stream, 4 to 5 hour. For those of you that have been harassing me about that, coming soon. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, drop those questions down below, guys, and I'll see you in the next upload.